Hello and welcome to our What's New session in SAP Datasphere today. My name is Klaus-Peter Sauer, and together with my colleagues on the product management team, we will be updating you on the latest functions and features which we delivered in the first quarter of this year. We will be covering updates in all areas of the product. So starting with some general product updates, then looking into areas like data integration, modeling, cataloging, and various other areas where we enhanced or delivered new features. At the end, I will also give you an outlook on what to expect. So what we're basically planning to deliver in Q2 this year as new features and functions, as well as beyond Q2. Let's have a look at some general updates. We extended the IP allow list UI with import and export buttons, allowing you to export a file that lists all allow listed IPs and their descriptions. You can also import an externally produced file and update the allow list with an append or an override option. This feature allows you to manage your IP allow list by importing or exporting your list to the same or a different SAP Datasphere tenant, and avoids the handling of hundreds of IP addresses manually, which could make the process much less prone to errors. The next product update is the adoption of the SAP Horizon theme. Datasphere has now adopted the SAP standard Horizon theme, which offers a modern and fresh look with a new vibrant color palette. The icons and the user interface elements may have changed to adopt this modern design, but the functionalities of the software really remain the same. Another feature which we delivered in release 05 this year is the unification of the sidebar navigation of the catalog as well as the marketplace. So this is basically our next step in the marketplace catalog conversions and have one unified discovery for all these assets, meaning we're streamlining the governed access to data products as well as the other assets you know as part of the catalog already. Looking at the system here, you see already the use of the new Horizon theme, as well as the combined entry here on the menu with the catalog and the marketplace convergence, where you find all these topics being brought together. Looking at the allow list feature, you find these import and export buttons there with the export, where you can also select the delimiter on the export functionality, which then downloads the file to your local machine, where you can open it up in a text editor, for example. When using the import functionality, you can use your Excel file, your CSV file with your IP list of choice and use the import functionality on the UI. There you select the file, and then you decide if you want to append new IPs or override the existing IP addresses if you click the import button. After a successful import, you see the IP addresses being appended to your list. With that, over to Daniel for an important announcement for customers using the Cloud Connector, and then to Getja to show us the new GenAI feature as part of the catalog.
With this slide, we want to make you aware that there will be a root certificate change on SAP Datasphere side, which is rolled out early July for SAP Datasphere instances in the hyperscaler regions that are listed in the table on the left. This update might require an update of the Java virtual machine that is used by SAP Cloud Connector setups on customer side, because after the rollout in July, Cloud Connector-based connections in SAP Datasphere that rely on old Java virtual machine versions will stop working. In the links, you will find all the necessary information, what needs to be done to make your Cloud Connector setups ready for the rollout in July. This also includes the required Java virtual machine version that is needed so that your Cloud Connector-based connections in SAP Datasphere keep working also after the update. For example, if you're using SAP Java Virtual Machine, the required version is 8.1.097 or newer. A corresponding customer communication email has already been sent out to all customers that have Datasphere tenants in the affected regions. The email also contains the necessary links as well as more detailed explanation. Let me emphasize that what is shown on the slide is not part of any of the Q1 Datasphere releases. Instead, it is only a general piece of information or alert that we want to share with you in advance. SAP recommends taking this action before 2nd of June, as stated in a customer communication email. That's it. Thank you.
Hello. Today I'm going to present you one of the features that we released for the catalog that leverages generative AI. So now you will get the opportunity to automatically describe the assets that are available in your catalog using generative AI. So that includes three different features. One is to automatically create the description of an asset directly from the catalog asset detail page. This short description, limited to 5,000 characters, can now be automatically generated based on the content and different metadata that are available for this asset. And then the user can decide to further tweak the content before saving it. Identically, we also have the opportunity to automatically generate the long and rich text description. Here, there are, of course, no limitations on the number of characters, and we are automatically generating different categories that includes not only a description of the main purpose of the asset, but also goes through the different information about the column details, if any, and how it is represented and how it is used and so on. The final feature using large language model generative AI for the catalog asset detail page is the opportunity to automatically associate existing tags to your asset. So you have the tags and hierarchy of tags. And if you have defined this hierarchy of tags, you can then automatically associate relevant tags that would match your asset. So all these three capabilities allow you to really streamline the process and optimize how you are going to detail and enrich the assets within your catalog. It can really take some time to do that manually. So having these generative capabilities really helps you to generate the content and then just fine tweak what is necessary on the asset page in order to enrich your content so that everyone can really understand what your assets are about. Well, let's see this directly in action. So now we are in the product, and here we are on the asset detail page of an SAP Analytics Cloud Story. So as I said, there are really three different types of features that are coming with this generative AI-based asset description enrichment. So the first one is for the short description, the one limited to 5,000 characters. So the one here as the summary. So you would have to click on edit, right? And you could directly enter a short summary by yourself, or you could just click here to generate a summary. And then once this summary is available, you can further tweak it and then save it. If you don't tweak it, right, you will see that it says that it's created with AI and that you need to verify the results before use, right? So here we have now a short summary or short description that can be directly associated with our asset, and it just required us to click on a button, then review the content and see if it's really fully really what we expected here to be described or further tweak it. The same here applies for the rich text description. Okay, so here we could really look at the asset itself, the impact and lineage, having a look at where it's coming from, what are the different details and column details associated to it, and then really redetailed or redescribe that. Or we could just also, once again, click on generate, and this will more or less do exactly the same thing and then create all the categories for you. And then you can have a look at these content, these different categories, further tweak them, further tweak the content, and then you will be able to really save a lot of time to describe your assets. As we can see here now, we have an overall description of what this object is about, and then the purpose, the different primary entities that are available, so the column details, how it is related to other different assets, the different constraints and unique features of it, potential use cases to leverage that particular story, and then a generic and general conclusion. If some of the content really is not necessarily meaningful for us, we can just take some of the content, remove it, further edit it, and so on, before, of course, saving it. Okay. Now the last usage of the large language model in using generative AI capabilities in the catalog here will be on the tags. As I said, we could manually have a look at all the different tags and hierarchy of tags and then assign that to our asset, or we could ask the system to automatically associate them, the only meaningful ones, to our asset. So it's really just one click of a button. I click on generate, and now it's associated directly to tags. If I believe that there are some tags that were assigned or linked that are not really meaningful, I can just really remove them. If I believe that some of them were missed, then I can have a look at the different hierarchies and assign them, of course, manually by myself. That's it for the leverage of the large language model in the catalog using generative AI.
Thank you, Getja, and over to Hannes, Mostafa, and Amok for updates in the data integration and monitoring area.
With this user story, we have introduced the generation of planvis files, which we previously had in views, now also for HANA transformation flow. So transformation flow in HANA spaces, you can now also generate the planvis files as you're kind of used to it from the views, so that you can get a deeper sense of understanding of what happens in the transformation flow, analyze how it works, where time is spent and performance goes into, and resources are spent by. So how does that work? If we are in the data integration monitor and you go into a transformation flow, you have now the ability, similarly to the view persistency, to run with the support settings. And here we can just simulate, or we can also generate the planvis file, and by doing so, it will run it once and generate you the files. I've done this before, so that we don't have to wait for it to finish. And we're basically seeing here the data, and the planvis file becomes available, and I can download the file. I'll get the file, and then you have the ability to analyze it either in the Visual Studio Code with the planvis add-on, or in the HANA Studio with the planvis analyzer, and then you'd see the regular planvis. Yep, and that's just, again, this small little feature to help you build and analyze your transformation flows. Thank you very much.
Hello, I would like to show you today the new improvement that we have around the task chain area, which is about allowing to cancel a complete task chain, and I think it's quite clear what the feature is about, so I'm going to jump directly to the demo and to show you that in action. So now we are in the data builder, and you can see here that I had already created a chain with a couple of objects. So I'm just gonna go right away and run the chain. And now that we have it running, we can as well navigate to the data integration monitor, and you have a look at the currently running chain. And once we navigate here, we can immediately spot that we have the new cancel run button here, which will allow us to initiate a cancellation activity on the chain, which will in return attempt to cancel all the underlying running children. So if I would press here on the cancel chain, that would automatically trigger a cancellation activity and task on the chain. And here's the running chain that we are currently canceling, and we can see here that the chain will in fact as well propagate the cancellation to the running children. In that case, we had a running view persistency task, which had in fact been failed and cancelled. The chain did automatically as well initiate the cancellation activity on the view persistency, which made in return the main task to fail. Now we can navigate back to the parent chain, and by navigating back we can indeed find that the cancellation activity did complete and that the chain failed due to the cancellation activity that we did. Um, if we had initiated the cancellation of the chain while the running task does not support canceling, like for example replication flows or OpenSQL database procedure, then the chain will not be able to cancel the underlying object, but it will wait for it to finish and it will not trigger any further task in the chain. I would like to show you today the new improvement around the scheduling component, which is the local time zone scheduling, including daylight saving. And the main objective here is to offer a new scheduling option in addition to the current UTC scheduling that we currently have. And that new option is the time zone scheduling that would automatically adapt to the daylight saving change. So in order to show you that, I'm going to jump directly to the demo to show you that in action. So I'm going to jump from here to the scheduling dialog, and here we're gonna immediately spot that we have a new property here called time zone option, and that would allow us the option to define our preferred time zone. I could, for example, say I want to schedule based on the Europe Berlin, for example, time zone at 9 o'clock every day. And that would show me now here on the right hand side the corresponding run in the UTC time, and you can see that 9 o'clock Berlin time is equivalent to 8 UTC time, but that is only until the 29th of March. After that, the time change will happen in Europe for daylight saving, and therefore it will begin to run at 7 o'clock UTC time from the day after the 29th. And if I would switch here to the time zone, then you can see that despite of the daylight saving taking effect, it would always run at 9 o'clock in the Berlin time zone. In addition to that, I could as well, for example, create a schedule being currently located in Europe. That would not stop me from creating a schedule in New York time zone, which will start at 9 every day in the New York time, which is corresponding to 13 o'clock UTC time. And you can see here it would run every 9 in the New York time, but if I would switch for comparison as well to my local time zone, you would see that it would be equivalent to 14 o'clock in my local time zone until 29th of March, and from then after that it will be running at 15 o'clock because of the daylight saving taking effect. So that would actually conclude my demo. I would like to thank you for your attention.
One of the items that we have now introduced, it's the integration between SAP Datasphere and SAP Cloud Application Lifecycle Management. and that is for health monitoring. This was a long-awaited integration that was supposed to come between SAP Datasphere and CloudLM, and now we have introduced that. And out of all the different uh, capabilities that CloudLM offers, we are focused initially on health monitoring. We do have other functionalities also in the pipeline for us, but the first one that we have come out with is the health monitoring. This is offered by SAP CloudLM for operations. And for those who are not fully aware, SAP Cloud ALM is included in the cloud subscription of that contains the enterprise support cloud edition and SAP enterprise support. Customers can start from the sub for me launchpad, and then they can find the entitlement for the SAP Cloud ALM, and then they can begin provisioning. Once in SAP Cloud ALM, uh, this I mean the when once the entitlement is done, the provisioning is done, and the service is ready. The first and the foremost thing is to make sure that Cloud ALM landscape knows about SAP Datasphere for Cloud ALM to pull the data from SAP Datasphere today for health monitoring, in the future for other services as well. And this is done via a daily job that is executing, which imports all the information based on the customer number. So based on the customer number, if the customer has multiple Datasphere instances, the import job would make sure that all the information is brought in. So whenever required, the customer can enable the the data collection for any service that is relevant. And once this is done, the next step is to make sure that individual service data collection is turned on. So in our case, health monitoring. So once the landscape is set, which is I said happens automatically, the next step is to make sure that health monitoring data collection is activated, and this is done through a toggle. We'll also look at that where the toggle exists. And once all of these steps are done, the next step is to actually use a dashboard. Now, this this capability is offering the monitoring of DataSphere tenants with the help of metrics that relate to memory usage, disk usage, the breakdown of the disk usage, the out of memory events, the task failures, the admission control events. All of this, uh, we know that did not want to have all the widgets that we have in system monitoring dashboard also on the health monitoring dashboard. The idea was to make sure that it is curated and it is to the point. So we think that these are the most important ones that give you the status of your tenant high level. Now, the obvious question that you would ask is, if we have system monitoring dashboard, if we have monitoring capabilities in Datasphere, why do we need Cloud ALM? Because obviously uh, it's going to show us the same data. The answer here is that imagine a situation where you have multiple SAP Datasphere instances and other SAP cloud services as well. And monitoring them would mean that you monitor them in a point-to-point basis, where you go into the tenant and then you monitor what's happening in the tenant. That's all good because that's exactly what an administrator requires. It requires to deep dive into the tenant performance, into the metrics that are available. But what if someone's monitoring the landscape? And monitoring the landscape needs to be done looking at all the different SAP Datasphere instances, maybe analytics cloud instances, and other cloud services instances as well, all in one place, to make sure that there is no service instance that requires your attention. This is exactly what Cloud LM does. It culminates or brings everyone together in that one dashboard. We look at how we look at the system as to how it actually is visualized. But the value that this brings is the ease of monitoring everything that you require from one place. But remember, this is not a replacement of your system monitoring dashboard, because the system monitoring dashboard, we see it as a superset. The Cloud LM dashboard for that particular instance would be a subset, and we curate only some selected metrics out of it. I've added some of the prerequisites here, or the links here. Also take a look at that. But let's go into what I want to show. And before I show you the system as to how it looks and everything, I also want to shed a few minutes on the process itself. So the first and the foremost is the prerequisite that says you need to have a subscription for SAP Datasphere instance, and you also need this Datasphere instance information to be available in the landscape. Again, automatically done, but if for whatever reasons this does not happen, we would request you to create a case using these components, and that would be looked at by our respective colleagues on the CloudLM side. This information is also available in the documentation, where you have additional information about what happens when you have a technical user, what happens when you have a standard user, and all the processes that are involved. But once the landscape is set, you can go to the landscape management in the CloudLM, and then obviously you will not see your Datasphere instance by default, but you click on scopes here, and then you see your Datasphere instance in your list. And here we have one instance that is attached to this landscape, which means that this information, this tenant information would be available here, and I can click on it and I can find more information about what kind of a tenant it is and what are the different IDs for the tenant. But this is not where health monitoring is. Now, to enable health monitoring, I said we require to it's required for us to actually enable the activation of data collection. So again, start with the documentation as to where it is maintained. I've also linked this to the slide deck itself, but here you would see a few steps that says open the scope selector, make sure that you see the service, and then you toggle the activation for the data collection. Let's take a look at that. And this is where CloudLM part starts. We are at the launchpad of CloudLM, and you'd see a lot of information here as to what is it about, and some help information or learning. Move to the operations, and here you would see health monitoring. Now we are going to go into health monitoring. Opens a new tab, and this was somehow similar to this is what you would see when you log in for the first time. Obviously not. This would not be selected when you log in for the first time. For whatever reasons, we don't have data that comes into the CloudLM landscape at the moment for this instance. So I'm going to select a week as my time frame, just so that I can go ahead with this demonstration. So what you need to do is you need to select the scope again, and then you would see your SAP Datasphere instance here. If you don't see it, and if you already know that the landscape is set in, what you need to do is you need to toggle your filter and make sure that you have selected the configured active and the not configured from here. I don't need to do that because I already have it. So I select and click apply. Now I see a green bar here that says okay, which means that the data is getting received, everything's working fine, and I have one service that is active. I can click on it and I can see additional information about this. But first things first, what if you're not getting the data here and the data activation needs to be done? Click on the gear icon, and here you would see information about whether or not you have enabled the data collection. If I turn it off, it will tell me that the data collection is disabled. If I turn it on, it tells me that the data collection is enabled. When you log in for the first time, or when a customer logs in for the first time, they need to make sure that the data collection is active so that the health monitoring capability is going to get this data. Now, let's go into this. Let's click on one of our instances. So as I said previously, if you have, let's say 10 instances of Datasphere in your landscape, you would see all of them listed here, provided that you have added them, and you would be able to select any one of them. So this is where such a dashboard where collection of all the different instances is done comes handy. I click on it and I come over to my health monitoring dashboard. It gives me some of the most important metrics as to what is the memory that is used, disk that is used, and also a bifurcation of disk storage. I'll show this later, and some additional information about events. Now let's take a look at these cards themselves. Click on the I button and you would see here that there is some information about what this metric is going to bring you, a link to the monitoring documentation, a link to the system monitoring dashboard in SAP Datasphere. So even if you are starting your journey from CloudLM, you can directly jump into system monitoring dashboard for this instance. That is also again an easy jump. And then you can, sorry for this, happens when you're using an internal tenant. And then you click on edit configuration. Here you would see that there is something called as threshold. You can also set thresholds and define what according to your organization is a warning, what is critical, and according to that, the visibility of that card is updated depending on the thresholds here. So it would really come handy when you want to set up those customizations. We're not going to do that at the moment. What we are now going to also additionally see here, that there is a concept called as events. right? So I click on the gear icon here, and then I would see that all the metrics that I have are set in here. So you can set in the thresholds from this page. But there's a thing called as events. Events are delivered out of the box by the capability, so health monitoring capability in our case, and these can be configured for additional actions or further actions.
Well,
I can
first of
click
all,
on this.
congratulations on the expansion of the role. We always want to do more work, so
I'm just going to mute. Did you hear? Now I can look at the event here, and I can decide what I want to do. I want to create an alert. Yes, I want to create an alert, or I want to send an email. I want to start some flow. I want to create some ticket. I want to send a chat notification. These actions are available. This is not Datasphere. This is CloudLM. So if you miss anything, if you want to improve it, CloudLM is the contact for you. But Datasphere benefits from this, right? Once you create an alert, and let's say that this alert is triggered, you would find this information in the alerting section here, where alerts are maintained. So all the alerts that have been created are obviously maintained here. The last thing before we are done is showing you the additional information for these cards. So I click on any one of these cards, you'd see here that it gives me additional information. For this card, it is not a lot, because the only thing that adds on is it tells me that I have 0.81% usage. But here there's a history button. I click on it, I select a wider time range, and then it tells me the data points that it has collected. And now, in addition to what is my memory used by spaces, I can also see how it has changed over the last few days, depending on the retention period. I'll also show the retention period shortly. But this is the information that is stored for each and every metric that you have. So every metric has this history button. Now, the disk storage used. This is not one metric, not a metric that shows you only one number, but it shows you a bifurcation. And this is the graph that you see in system monitoring dashboard in SAP Datasphere. So what is the usage by others? What is the usage by global, by spaces, and by audit logs? So even for this information, you don't have to log in into system monitoring dashboard, and you can see the history for this as to how it has grown or how it has gone down depending on the actions that you've taken. Someone tells you, I've deleted some data out of my space on a certain tenant and it should reduce 10 gigabytes of space usage. You can come here and see whether it has actually happened that way, because it is going to historize that data. Now, finally, back to the data activation panel here. In addition to activating the data collection, you can also define the retention period for how long do you want the data to be retained. And this is something that will apply to the CloudLM instance that you have. This completes the flow. I know that there will be questions, so I'll try to answer them, but most of the information is available in the documentation, so please check it. Thank you. Back to you, KP.
Thank you, Amok, and over to Jan and Abdul for more updates in the data modeling area.
We've added a small but important change to the way you configure external hierarchies with directory. And there are certain hierarchies, and these are particularly important in the standard for S4, like profit center, GL account, and cost center, where a hierarchy directory is identified not by one, but by two key fields. And with the way we configured hierarchy directory objects beforehand, this wasn't quite possible, because up here, where you have in the new UI a drop-down with associations, back in the day, there was a drop-down with fields. And so you could use a field here, and then you couldn't use it anywhere else, and this could only be one field. And so, but because this is just a requirement that constantly comes up from the standard in S4, we chose to configure this slightly differently and say, what if you choose an association here? This association can use 1, 2, 3, 5 key fields, whatever, and so you choose that. And with that, we totally allow you to use that column here elsewhere when configuring your node keys. And so let's see how this looks in the demo. So here we have a hierarchy with directory, and it has a couple of associations. And so these associations are important. And if you check this one, for example, it literally has 2 key fields. So it really requires you to be able to choose that also in the dialog. And this is up here what you do when configuring your hierarchy with directory. So here you have now, as before, you choose parent and child, and now you choose how you reach out to your hierarchy directory. So which is the listing of those hierarchies. And there can be 1, 2, or many associations that you can use. And all of those that are listed here are totally selectable. So if I select one here, I go over to that. So that was the wrong one. So here is the actual account hierarchy. And now I can use any of the other fields still when configuring something. So I can use any of those fields and none of them is taken and thus blocked. And this was a shortcoming that, we now relieved. A very important feature has landed in the area of variables in init models. So what is now possible is to set a dynamic default for variables. And users are then seeing what is correct for their given context. So based on the user ID, I would possibly see variables filled with my cost center. Based on the date, I can see I'm prompted for the end of the last quarter, end of the last month or so, whatever is the current context. And normally this is based on user identity or time. So how this would work is that you have a variable, and then in order to find what would be the right default, you use another entity, so any table or view that would compute that value. And this is set up in a very similar manner as the concept that we established last year, or that is called variable derivation, where you would use something to find the final value of a variable. Now here we're using the same concept for deriving the value that the user shall see, their cost center today, yesterday, whatever. And so as you see on the screen, I have a variable here, defined cutoff date, that is of type date. It's sort of, in this case, linked to a dimension because I'm using it as a restricted measure variable, but the same concept would totally work also for standard variables, reference date variables, whatever. And then further down in the screen, you choose that there is this new element here, dynamic default. That's how you want to fill it. It shall be a single value, and it can only be a single value. And then you want to define a lookup entity, and that shall use, by default, the end of last year. So how would this look like in the system? So here we're having exactly that same model. And so down here, I defined that cutoff date. And so when I check here, I'm having exactly what you just saw on the screen. And now here, it's a dynamic default. And here I chose the lookup entity here. So what is this lookup entity? So this lookup entity is a table of view that returns a single row only. And here I want to do something based on date. And so here I wrote petty code in order to find today, yesterday, end of last month, end of last year. We're recording this in January 25, so end of last year is obviously the December 31st of 2024. And by configuring that this entity shall be used and that this column shall be used, I'm exactly identifying this value. And so obviously when I now run this model, then I'm being prompted for a cutoff date, but it's defaulted to the end of last year. And this can totally use the current user as well. You would need to pick it up from the application context. So the XS application user is the variable you want to look out for. We have answered to questions or requirements that have come up very often in the past, and that is around version management. And so how can I look at past states of an object? How can I, how can I revert to that past state? How can I compare what happened since, and so on? And so what we introduced is a very first version of that. And that works as follows. You have your object editor, and essentially every object offers now a button that you see there under one, and that is it's listing versions of that same object. You can choose to open them, and then they open in a read-only second tab. And so that would give you the possibility to inspect whether this is really the object you are interested in, and sort of in a side-by-side visual fashion with your current state of the object, you could also do the compare. At that point in time, we're not yet spawning the validations, because in many situations, A, this would take time, and B, quite overwhelm you because now time has moved forward. And so this object in its new or in its retrieved form would possibly not quite work well together, because you have a view sitting on a table and this table might no longer exist, for example. And sort of in order to spare that and really focus on, okay, what is the object I have in front of me? Is this the one I'm interested in? This is what we enabled. And this is something that we could enable essentially also for all the objects. If you now identified this is exactly the version you want to restore and want to make your current development state, you have an own explicit action that you see there under 4, that you try to restore this. And now this becomes an editable object. All the validations are started. And you, in very many cases, will need to do the cleanup work to bring it into in accordance with today's world. As I said, situations that were previously not possible, like having a view on an inexisting table, can now totally occur. And it's up to you to deal with these. And if you have unrecoverable errors, like that said example, you need to bring that table into existence or replace by something else, do other types of modeling. If you're lucky, you can totally sort of save that, and then this will overwrite the current state of the object. You can also choose to save as, and sort of save that as under a new object name. The versions at this point in time are created automatically for you at deployment time. You can, so mentally, it's possibly helpful to compare this with the version management that Office uses, for example, as well. If you look at past versions of your PowerPoint, there you also have a list of old versions that were just taken by autosave at random fashion by random users. And you can open them in a second mode and then do the visual comparison and restore them to overwrite it. So this is the mental model you need to have for this. So there are a couple of things to be said about this. So first of all, what we're restoring here is really metadata of the object. It's the model. It's not the actual entity. So this is particularly important for tables, because if you meanwhile drop the column, it's no longer there. Now you're retrieving an object from the past that has the column defined. The data is not being brought back. It's unretrievable. You need to reload into that table in a way. So there's really no way. We're restoring the metadata here. What is also important to point out is all the things that don't work. It's super helpful what we did there but it's only a first step. So it's there's no version comparison built in. So you can do this visual comparison between the 2 tabs, that possibly the standard way. You can also download the season of the object. That was something that was on the slide, but that I didn't sort of point out so explicitly. But if you download the season of the current object and of the past version, then any file comparison tool like gitdiff or so would do this comparison for you. What is also
A painful cut for this state is that you cannot create manual versions at this point in time. So manual versions are really being created by deployment. And so that you can't say, oh, this is the version I like, possibly even give it a name. This is the version I showed during a demo. This is the version I shipped. Also, it's not possible at this point in time to create such a version manually. We have this on the backlog, but this will need its time to mature. Also, giving comments to versions is also not possible. This is sometimes painful because you will have, because of many deployments, you also have many versions. And so giving them a semantic beyond the time point at which they were taken is today not possible. Another painful cut is that you can't version more than one object at the same time. So you can't say, oh, these 5 objects, I'm now, or this folder or so, I want to sort of freeze together. We laid the groundwork for this by now doing this on a single object, but for multiple objects, it's at this point in time not possible. The restore that was on the previous slide, but I forgot to point it out, is only really working for a selected set of objects. So that's for table views, DACs, and analytic models. All the others you can look at. You can download the season. You can try to upload the tweaked season and overwrite it, or upload the season. But unless this automatically works, you will not be able to restore that. The other editors still need to learn to sort of make the restore attempt and deal with these situations like the view without the table, and what is the equivalent for a transformation flow and for other objects. So the other editors need to do that. And what is also missing at this point in time, what we're really working on this, is Git integration. So when you talk versioning, very naturally the topic of Git comes up, and this is not included here. As I said, we're working on this, but yeah, this is not what is meant here. So with that in mind, let me demo that. And for this, my colleague Abdul in product management recorded this video.
Look at the system for an example here. So we have 2 tables with an inner join. It's joined on order ID, as you can see here. Let's look at the projection and have a preview here and see how many rows come up. I can see that there are more than 130,000 rows, and I want to restore it to another version where I had a filter as well, right? So let me go to the versions, and I pick a particular version, open it in a new tab. And this version comes up in a new tab. It has not yet been restored. So notice that the filter has come in, and I can see what the filter condition is. Once I open the relevant version in a new tab, what I could do is I could position my browsers or the 2 tabs side by side and visually have a look at the differences. Here, I notice that I have in my version that I'm interested in restoring, I have a filter option here, and I might have also reduced the number of columns in the final view here, right? So at the moment, we don't have a direct diff here. You could also use this export to JSON option and do a diff using an external text comparison tool. That's what you could do. And then you could choose to restore this option. Once you restore, let me maximize that. At the moment, it has restored and brought it to your editor, but it's still needs another step. You have to save this to restore to this particular version. Now you're good to go. And you might want to just look at the data preview again to see how many columns come up in the filter. There we have it. We have 470 rows from the earlier 130,000. That restore was straightforward. Let's try to restore a version when a dependent view has breaking changes. Now let's see what happens when I have an underlying table that has some change. So let me go to view order items here and make a change. So here, let me exclude the product ID. Save that. I get a warning that product ID is deleted and may break dependent objects, which is view order details. So I'll save it anyway. The reason we removed the product ID from the view order items is to choose a not so happy path where the restore was as smooth as we demoed earlier. Now we are in the view order details and we want to try to restore to another version which was using the product ID. So let's see if that is successful. I'll go to the versions again. Let me try to restore to version 10 this time, right? Where it was using the product ID in my view. I'm in version 10 now, and I can see that the product ID is used here. So let me try to restore this. Datasphere is telling me that there have been some changes to the source, and the onus is on me to review those modifications and redeploy them before I apply it. So I can see that there's a design time error, and I can look at the details. Sure enough, the product ID has been changed, and I'm not able to deploy this. Right? I'll have to fix it before I deploy that. So it's good that Datasphere is catching that error. So we know exactly what's going on. We are able to restore when everything is satisfied, and whenever we have an issue, it gives us validation errors there.
The last enhancement we have here on the modeling side is a UI enhancement on specifically returning to the last open folder when you close an artifact, right? So far the editors always jump back to the root folder, and now we change this behavior that you jump back to the last open folder on your data builder. So looking at it in the system, I have this analytic model here open, and if I close it with the closing icon here on top, I jump back into the folder where I started and not into the root folder. So small enhancement, but I think it helps a lot with efficiency working on the data builder objects. Now let's look forward into the outlook, what we're planning on delivering in Q2, Q3, and beyond. So first thing on the catalog side here is expanding the crawling capabilities towards BW for HANA also as a new source for catalog. And then, of course, expanding the data center coverage. We usually do that in each and every quarter. This time or this year with a focus on Google Cloud Platform and Azure data centers being added. Looking at the home screen, we want to introduce a custom card where you can bring in your own text, your links to materials you want to provide to people using SAP Datasphere directly on the home screen already. So that customization feature will be coming there. Then looking at the data integration area, we want to enhance the replication flows with allowing source datasets being used in multiple replication flows, as well as supporting views as sources in replication flows. Looking at the target and source connectivity, we want to enhance this also this quarter with Microsoft SQL Server being available as an additional source, as well as SAP Signavio being available as an additional target, and enhancing the Confluent connection capability to also being able to support arrays in replication flows. If we look at the task chains, also a few interesting ones. We plan on deliver what we call deep retry, so retrying failed tasks in nested task chains, so being able to re-trigger them, and this is something very useful if you have complex task chains specifically. And then also being able to call REST APIs via the task chains, and so really embed them with synchronous, asynchronous modes in as tasks in task chains. And on the semantic onboarding side, we want to enhance the import functionality here to SAP HANA cloud-based calculation views. On the modeling side, we're looking into providing a measure dependency graph where you can see, similar like in your lineage functionality now, how different KPIs are being built up, how the measures are composed, etc. Very long-awaited feature here is the stacking of analytic models, so that you can build analytics models on top of other analytic models. As well, expanding the analytic model to be able to define secondary structures. That's a feature some of you might know from your BW experience, right? So that's similar to how BW queries used to work with these structures of KPIs, which you can define there. As well, on the analytic model, we want to provide the replacement functionality for fact sources, that you can, if you have different fact sources over time, be able to replace an existing one with a new one you might have created while preserving the other functions and semantics you modeled inside the analytic model. Looking into Q3, so also catalog crawling expansion is planned there for S/4HANA as well as for HANA Cloud, and later in the year then ECC is on our roadmap. On the data integration side, we want to support a new load type of Delta only for replication flows, so that you don't have to have an initial load first when using Delta functionalities, but that you can have a certain point in time from where on you want to have deltas only being transferred from a certain connection. Then we want to support SFTP as a target also in replication flows, so that you can write your files where the file transfer protocol in a secure fashion. On the task chain, we want to offer a public API for being able to trigger task chains from the outside in Q3. And then if we look into the modeling area, and we want to allow restricted measures in analytic models, so that you can restrict on a node of a hierarchy, right? Another feature several customers are looking for is time period based calculations, meaning calculations like year to date, month to date, quarter to date, as standard business functions as part of the analytic model. Then we're also looking into unit conversion, being able, similarly to what we offer for quite some time now with the currency conversion, being able to have that unit conversion capability also as part of the analytic model. And then last but not least here, being able to share analytic models together with its contributing entities to other spaces, right? So also interesting features here. Looking further down, the timeline here into 2026, you find certain things on the roadmap at the moment, like supporting Cloud Connector for cloud data stores, a REST API connectivity specifically for Ariba solutions, self-service capability on enabling availability or multi-availability zones capabilities. This is there currently as a ticket-based approach already, but we want to enable this also as a self-service capability. Then I mentioned Microsoft SQL Server as a source being planned for Q2. We also plan this as a target, but that's very likely next year. And then also what we have on our long to midterm roadmap is the introduction of namespaces and being able to share dependent entities in the modeling area. So that brings us to the end of the session today. Many thanks to all our speakers for preparing the great content. I hope you enjoyed the session and thanks for being here with us today. See you next time for another What's New update next quarter.